Good evening to all. Today we will deal about the structure and function of the different connective tissues already which we have done, and today we will very firstly go through the different structures and function of the connective tissues. So the connective tissues are the one which are always going to connect muscles like epithelial, connective muscles and nervous tissues are the classifications. And connective tissues are one of the four major categories of animal tissues that supports joints and separate different parts of the tissue and organs of the body. And the cells of the connective tissue are broadly apart from each other, and compared to the other tissues, these are little type of the different tissues when compared to the other type of the epithelial tissues, etc. So it contains a large amount of extracellular matrix which is considerably absent in the epithelial cells. So the general features of the connective tissues are they are present in all part of the body excluding the central nervous system. And some of the points need to be now. These are never exposed to outer environment. They will be present inside the body, and most of the connective tissue do contain lot of blood vessels. Means they are highly vascularized, and they have receptors which can perceive the pain, pressure, temperature, and other sensations. So the connective tissues fill spaces between organs and tissues and provide the structure and metabolic support for the other type of the tissues and organs. Hence, the connective tissues consist two chief components. Number one, the extracellular. The number two is the intracellular, and the cells of the connective tissues do secrete extracellular fibers and also account for the major components like the matrix for which support the tissues differently, and also it is one of the important tissue in which the important examples are the other soft tissues, and the cells of the connective tissue secrete extracellular fibers, and various cells various cells of the connective tissues are always being connected with that of always connected with that of the mesenchyme, which arises from mesoderm and embryonic germ layer and is composed of the satellite or fusiform cells embedded in a gelatinous ground substance. And mesenchyme is the stem tissue of all the connective tissues, especially in the body. Then functions of the connective tissue is to support and protect the tissues, transport, especially the fluid connective tissues like blood and lymph, efficiently carry lot of substances from one area of the body to the another area. They also store the adipose cells in the connective tissue storage, like fat tissue is also a connective tissue. And defense mechanism, it involves the defense against microbes through the intracellular interactions and the antibodies production by specialized cells of the connective tissues. So, what are all the components of the connective tissues? Mainly, they are derived into the one is specialized cells and extracellular matrix. These are the two important components wherein which the extracellular matrix is made up of fibers in a protein and polysaccharide matrix secreted and organized by the cells in the extracellular matrix. And variations in compositions of the extracellular matrix usually it determines the properties of a connective tissue. So The different type of the connective tissue here have got the fibroblasts, the major component of the matrix, in fact, is the water. And specialized cells in the connective tissue are fibroblasts. Then these fibroblasts are the supporting tissues and the projections of flat cells containing the bulky material. So they contain large and oval shaped nuclei with one or two components conspicuous nuclei. So the macrophages are also the connective tissues which are not the regular shape and have got the branching processes. At first, these cells are not active in stage, but whenever there is an inflammation, they are intensively turned into amoeboid and phagocytic inactivity, and they directly engulf blood cells, bacteria, dead cells, and debris, digesting this material with lot of powerful enzymes which are secreted by them, or else they will be very dormant in the blood cells, and they are also called as the white blood cells, and they are also sometimes referred as the monocytes. And macrophages are not in the regular shape, so they do not have a perfect shape. Whereas the fixed macrophages exists in the particular tissue, and it includes the alveolar macrophages of the lungs and splenic macrophages in the spleens. And some wandering macrophages have the ability to move throughout the tissues and gather at the site of infection or inflammation to carry the phagocytes. Whereas the plasma cells are small cells that arise from B lymphocytes, a type of white blood cells. And plasma cells release antibodies and proteins that attack the reduce the effect of foreign materials in the body. Mast cells do contain lot of granules and they do contain the histamine, heparin, and serotonin. And also the adipocytes are the one. They are the fat cells, and these store the excess fat which is required for the body in the form of the triglycerides. So they are always present under the skin and around the organs, inside the peritoneal cavity, etc. And leukocytes are also known as the WBCs or white blood cells that move along with the connective tissue around the blood vessels. So these are all the structure of the connective tissues like the fibers. Here you can see lot of fibers are there, then mast cells are there, elastic fiber, collagen tissue, then macrophages, then mesenchymal cells, lymphocytes, and many more type of the specialized type of the cells are there, and these in nutshell called as the connective tissue. Whereas the extracellular matrix of the connective tissue is made up of the extracellular matrix secreted by the cell. They are all secretory constituents, protein fibers interposed in an amorphous mixture of large protein polysaccharide molecules termed as ground substance. So they are required for the supporting of this connective tissues. So there are two major components of the extracellular material. Number one, ground substance, and second one is the fiber. So the ground substance is made up of the space between the cells and fibers, and it may be a fluid, semi-fluid, jelly-like, or calcified. And the functions of the ground substances are it support the cells and help connecting to cell, and it helps in water storage and works as exchange medium between the blood and also the cells. It has an important role, especially the tissues which develop, migrate, proliferate, and change in shape. And the connective tissue fibers, these are actually called as the connective tissue fibers. Then collagen fibers, elastic fibers, reticular fibers, and many more type of the tissues are there. And collagen fibers are very strong and resist pulling forces, but they are not stiff but allow the tissue flexibility. So the chemically, collagen fibers consist of the protein collagen, so which is very abundant in our body or animal body. Whereas the elastic fibers, as the name indicates, they are having the flexible structures and they are glycoprotein apart from that of the collagen. Then they are branched and wavy, just like the spider wave, etc. And after stretching, will return to their original length. Whereas the reticular fibers are also called as the least common of three. These are very thin collagen fibers and commonly form branching and these type of the connective tissues, adipose tissues, nerve fibers, and smooth muscle tissues are the examples of the reticular fibers. And here you can see the collagen fibers are very strong in structure. They always do give a very strengthy base to the most of the tissues, whereas the reticular fibers do have the intermittent cells, whereas the elastic fibers do have the flexibility or stretching capacity. And classifications of connective tissue and the basically the connective tissues can simply be classified as the embryonic cells and mature connective tissue, and there are about different type of these connective tissues are there. Embryonic connective tissues are the one which start developing basically in the embryo and maybe in almost all the embryo and during the 2 months of the pregnancy and the fetus and developed during the pregnancy period of third month till birth. So these are called as the embryonic connective cells. Once again, these are classified into mesenchyme and mucous connective tissues. So mesenchyme means these are not regular in shape and embedded in semi-fluid ground substance which is composed of delicate reticular fibers. And the location of these is exclusively under skin along developing bones of the embryo and some adult connective tissue like along the blood vessels. And the function of mesenchyme is almost all types of the connective tissue is formed by this type of the connective tissue itself. So this is the structure of the mesenchyme. Most of the tissues do contain the mesenchyme. Whereas the mucus is also another connective tissue or mucoid connective tissue. So this is widely scattered throughout the body and it is secreted by the special type of the cells, secretory cells or the goblet cells, whatever we call, and it's also transiently encountered as a stage in differentiation of mesenchyme into the mature connective tissue. So these are mainly located in fetus. It forms the umbilical cord, and this is the one. Umbilical cord forms the especially the epithelial surface, then collagen fiber, then it also contains the nucleus and ground substances. So embryo do also contain this type of the connective tissues. Then the mature connective tissues, please note down this thing, it is divided into several type of the tissues in which we need to remember that these are classified into connective tissue as such, then fluid connective tissue, third one is the supporting connective tissue. So three categories. Once again, connective tissue proper is classified into loose connective tissue, then the dense connective tissues. Loose connective tissue are the alveolar connective tissues, adipose tissues, and reticular tissues. Whereas the dense connective tissues are regular and irregular and elastic. Whereas the fluid connective tissues are always the best example is the blood, which is a, an important component of the CVS or cardiovascular type of the system. And the lymph is another important connective tissue contained in lymphatic system. Whereas the supporting connective tissues like cartilage, bone, or the hard connective tissues, what you can say, because they are the solid rubber in matrix and do contain hyaline cartilage, elastic cartilage, and fibrocartilage. Whereas the bone is a solid and crystalline matrix containing connective tissue. So these are all the different type of the mature connective tissues. Whereas the mature connective tissues are always present in the fetus and mature connective tissues are present in the adult. Then loose connective tissues, as the name indicate, they are loosely embedded in the body, and loose connective tissue forms a layer that separates the skin from underlying systems, whereas the areolar connective tissue is a part of the lungs, and it is known as the packing material of the body. As it is found in nearly every body structure, it is present subcutaneous layer deep around the skin and papillary region of the dermis, lamina propria, mucous membranes near blood vessels, and its the areolar connective tissue function is to provide strength, elasticity, and support to the different body parts. They are present everywhere. Then here you can see the different type of the areolar connective tissue. So they are loosely connected from one to each other by the elastic fiber, in which collagen fibers are there, and also fibroblast nuclei is there. And this is the areolar connective tissue, and the magnification is 330 times more. Adipose connective tissue is a very well defined connective tissue, and there are varieties of the adipose tissues are there. Number one, white adipose tissue, brown adipose tissue are there, whereas the white adipose tissue composed of 20 to 25% of the healthy adults, then it is found supporting to the kidneys and eyes in between muscle fibers and under the skin, where it is a thermal insulator, whereas the brown connective tissue is present in fetus and newborn only. It includes most abundant capillary network and several pigmented mitochondria that are responsible for aerobic cellular respiration. When brown tissue is metabolized, it produces less energy and considerably more heat, other fat, contributing to the maintenance of the body temperature. In some adults, it is present in small amounts, and location it is present in subcutaneous layer, inner to skin surrounding heart and kidneys, yellow bone marrow, stuffing around joints, etc. And the adipose tissue function is to slow the heat loss, cushioning effect, shock absorbing, and the energy storehouse of the body. In case of the newborn, the brown adipose tissue or BAT is produced to maintain the heat, especially in the body temperature. So this is the connective tissue fat, especially in case of heart, where it has got a nucleus and cytoplasm, then fat storage area, then blood vessels are also present in the adipose tissues, then plasma membrane are present everywhere. Then reticular connective tissue is located in the spleen, lymph node, red bone marrow, reticular lamina, etc. Then these do consist of fine interlocking network of the reticular fibers and the collagen fiber. and it forms a stroma supporting frame network of the organ and binds smooth muscle tissue cells and filters and eliminates damaged blood vessels, especially on the spleen. So, this is a structure of the reticular connective tissues. In between the connective tissue, it is located in the spleen, etc., liver. And dense connective tissues are the thickly embedded tissues and more fibers, and these do have less number of the connective tissue. So dense connective tissue, as the name indicates, they are dense, means thick. They are also called as fibrous tissues or collagenous tissues. And dense connective tissues are tough, strong, and durable. They resist tension and distortion and hard when compared to the bones and muscles. So once again, they are classified into dense regular connective tissues. Then the example of this one is the tendons or the cords of the dense regular connective tissues that attach skeletal muscles to the bones. Their collagen fibers run along the length of the tendon and transfer the pull of the contracting muscle to the bone, and ligaments resemble the tendons but connect one bone to the another one. And ligaments often contain the elastic fibers as well as the collagen fibers and thus can tolerate a modest amount of the stretching. And the aponeurosis are the layers of the tendon-like tissues and located in many type of the tissues like tendons, ligaments, etc. Then these are produced for attachment between various structures of the bone and pulling capacity. So this is a structure of a tendon in between the muscle fibers or skeletal muscle fibers are being attached, and nucleus of the fibroblast looking very long and the collagen fibers are there, and dense irregular connective tissues are located in the surfaces of the tissues, reticular deeper region, dermis of the skin, then fibrous pericardium of the heart, and many more, and etc. So these do function as the pulling tensile strength in many directions. And this is the photo of dense irregular connective tissue from the dermis. So when they are enlarged, they can be seen like this, like a wooden structure, especially on the tree. So these are called as the dense irregular connective tissues. Elastic connective tissues are located in many places like lung tissues, walls of the elastic arteries, trachea, bronchi, vocal cords, suspensor ligaments of the penis, and also the uterus, and many more. And these are the elastic fibers and fibroblasts between fibers and yellowish color. And function is allowing the stretching up of various organs. It is sturdy and move back to the original shape after being stretched, just like the elasticity is important in normal functioning of the lungs always. So this is the one where in which it is present a dense connective tissue, elastic tissue, always it is contracting and relaxing. So the structure can be seen as multi-layers, and elastic connective tissue looks like this under the microscope. And supporting connective tissue is always the example of the cartilage and bone. So these are more tougher and sturdy structures constitute a strong framework which support the rest part of the body. And these connective tissues are composed of extra cellular matrix rich in the fibers. In some cases, it contains deposits of insoluble calcium salts also in some of the time. Then cartilage, as you know, it is also present in different type of the different part of the body, and it's a jelly-like ground substance. So it is not equivalent to that of the bone, but functions as a soft bone, and it can tolerate noticeably more stress than loose and dense connective tissues. Cells of mature cartilage termed as the chondrocytes and prevail singly or in a group within spaces termed as leucine in the extracellular matrix. And everyone know that the cartilages are also present in the ear, nose, and many more places. Especially they have got a hyaline cartilage. It is a gel-like substance, appears in the body, bluish in white, shiny substance, and very thin collagen fibers are not easily visible in the microscope also. So the hyaline cartilage is abundant in body. It's prevalent at ends of the long bones, then interior ends of the ribs, nose, parts of the larynx, trachea, ear pinna, embryonic and fetal skeleton. So the function of these smooth surfaces of moving joints is provides the flexibility and also the support. So this is the hyaline cartilage. Then fiber cartilage location is the pubic symphysis, intervertebral discs, then menisci, the cartilage pads of the knee, portions of the tendons that insert into the cartilage, and the cells of the fiber cartilages are chondrocytes that are scattered everywhere. So these are all the cartilaginous type of the tissue, fibrous cartilage and fibrocartilage. So these have got the very special type of the elastic type of the tissues. At the same time, they also give the support to the especially the skins of the eye, not eye, the ear and also the nose, etc. So they cannot be called as the bones. So elastic cartilage is located in larynx, pharynx, and external ear, auditory tubes. So these are elastic. Whenever there is a contraction and relaxation, they will come to the normal position and termed as yellow cartilage. So it gives the strength and stretchability. So ear pinna of the animals or human being is made up of the cartilages, and it is containing different type of the structures including the matrix, then perichondrion, elastic fibers, etc. are present, and densely they are put. And bone tissue is one of the most toughest or hard connective tissue made up of the skeletal system. And this will give a very strong support to the body, and the body shape is being formed by the bones tissue. And bones are made up of calcium, phosphorus, and also do contain red bone marrow, which generates the blood cells and contain yellow bone marrow, storage site of the triglyceride. And bones are the organs comprised of different connective tissues, and these include bone or osseous tissue, periosteum, red and yellow bone marrow, and endosteum. Location compact and spongy bones. Tissue constitutes various parts of the bones of the body. So, as everyone knows, the function of the bone tissue provides support, protection, and also the storage of the cells, and it contains blood forming tissue. So it is very well protecting the internal organs, especially the skull is the one. So inside the bone, there these are all some long bone. So So this is the bone marrow inside, and periosteum is the external cover, and this is the ostium, then Haversian canal, then bone cell. It's also called as the osteocyte, and the many type of the tissues are there. That's the cortical bone and the bone matrix. So if we look very closely into the bone cell, it looks like this particularly, and it's a porous structure surrounded by the blood vessels also. So compact bones are the one tightly they are packed in the osteons, and the central canal termed as osteonic or Haversian canal that is enclosed by the concentric rings, or they are also called as the lamellae. Then the bone marrows are placed spaces between the rings of matrix termed as lacunae, and small channels are termed as the canaliculi radiate, and we will also see the structure now. Then see here, this is a spongy bone, and this is the compact bone. So spongy bone is having lot of porous type of the tissues, whereas the compact bone do contain hard type of the tissues. And spongy bone or the cancellous bone is lighter and less than that of the compact bone. So it contains different type of the layers like plates or trabeculae and bars of the bone of neighboring to small and irregular cavities which have red bone marrow. The canaliculi attach to the neighboring cavities instead of central Haversian canal to receive their blood supply. The trabeculae are organized to give the maximum strength. The trabeculae of spongy bone follow the lines of chest, and they are having different type of the tissues. Coming to the fluid connective tissue, so it includes blood and lymph, which are the important examples characteristic of the collections of cells in fluid extracellular matrix. Under the normal conditions, the proteins dissolved in this watery matrix do not form large insoluble fibers. In blood, the watery matrix is called as the plasma. Plasma is less blood minus RBCs. Blood tissue is a connective tissue having liquid extracellular matrix and formed elements. The extracellular matrix is termed as blood plasma. So, blood plasma is a pale yellow fluid which consists of the generally the water with wide variety of dissolved material like nutrients, wastes, enzymes, plasma proteins, hormones, respiratory gases, and ions. Whereas suspended in the blood plasma are formed like the elements RBCs, WBCs, and platelets. And RBCs carry oxygen to different type of the body tissues and remove some carbon dioxide from them, not all. White blood cells are the scavenger cells and are responsible for the phagocytosis, immunity, and allergic responses. Platelets participate in clotting up of the blood. So these are the red blood cells which are having the spherical shape, whereas the platelets are little different from that of the RBCs, which whereas the white blood cells are the neutrophils, monocytes, and many more type of the cells are which are present. Then the location of this type of the connective tissue is within the blood vessels, within chambers of the heart. So RBCs carry oxygen and few carbon dioxide. White blood cells only carry phagocytosis and mediate allergic type of reactions and immune system reactions, WBCs, white blood cells. Then whereas the platelets are very much required for the blood clotting. So all these are always be circulating inside the body, inside the capillaries or the big blood vessels. Whereas the lymph is a totally different material from that of the blood. So let us see what are all the components of the lymph. So it moves in the lymphatic vessels, which is a parallel system to that of the cardiovascular system. But compared to cardiovascular system, the lymphatic system is very low profile in case. So this is the connective tissue which composed of various forms of the cells in transparent liquid extracellular matrix that resemble to blood plasma similar to that of the blood plasma, whereas it contains much lesser proteins when compared to the blood plasma. So the lymph varies from one part of the body to the another part. For example, living lymph nodes includes many lymphocytes. So a type of the white blood cells in contrast to the lymph from the small intestine, and this has a high content of newly absorbed dietary lipids. The three main forms of the lymphocytes are the T cells or T lymphocells or thymus cells. So these are originated from the thymus. B cells means bursa derived lymphocytes and natural killer cells, NK cells or natural killer lymphocytes. And lymphocytes have characteristically large when compared to the other white blood cells. So these are located in the lymphatic system, a parallel system, but it is not having the pumping type of the system, and it facilitates the immune system to the body. Then here you can see that different type of the white blood cells like the basophil. So inside the blood vessels, blood capillaries, so many type of the cells are present. So this one magnified cell is the basophil. Then this one is the eosinophil, whereas the monocyte is also having similar structure like basophil, but it is having the larger type of the surface area, whereas the neutrophils have always have got the two type of the lobes, and the red blood cells are surrounding. Then that's about the different type of the connective tissues, and